Oh, hello again, and welcome to Denton's Tales. Now, this time I want to talk about a subject I have spoken about previously, but some time ago, and many newer subscribers will probably not have seen it, though even for those who have, this is a revised and updated version. A very strange subject indeed. As a matter of fact, subjects really don't get any stranger than this one. One which is obviously pagan. Yes, Celtic, Irish pagan for that matter. The signs of pagan beliefs, or they simply jump out and hit you right in the face. They slap you full in the gob. It's clearly as pagan as Odin's eye patch. But equally obviously, it is obviously Christian by date and location. In fact, it couldn't possibly be anything else but Christian, except for the fact that it really doesn't seem to be either pagan or Christian. Well, you're confused now, aren't you? Well, join the club. Everybody else is too. It's an enigma wrapped up in a mystery with a touch of, shall we say, intimacy added in. Oh yes, quite a lot of intimacy, I can assure you. And given that, I must warn those of a sensitive or prudish disposition, or those of a weak constitution easily upset, that aspects of it may prove highly agitating. And I am not responsible for possible shock or for recurring nightmares that persons may suffer having watched this video. If you decide to proceed past this warning, then you do so at your own risk. Yes, you've been warned. So, anything happens to you, well, tough, not my fault. I'm going to talk about SHEILA-na-GIG, a very curious and unique personality, quite unlike anything else in Irish Celtic mythology or folklore or history, both in the way she is depicted and how she came to be. But very, very contradictory. As I said, clearly pagan in origin, or at least apparently so at first sight, and everything about her indicates her pre-Christian Celtic nature, the crude manner in which she is drawn, the overt sexuality that seems to establish a link to fertility goddesses, earth mothers, and the like. But her sexual depiction was quite unlike that of other pagan images. It's never found on anything dating from that era. There is no actual pagan image anything like SHEILA-na-GIG, which is curious enough in itself, had she existed at that time. And even more so is the fact that not only is she seen exclusively well into Christian times, seemingly bursting into prominence a century after even the Old Norse peoples had accepted Christianity, but is most commonly found in or around churches. Yes, churches. They are her favorite places to be found in. So, an obviously pagan image, never actually found in pagan times, but popping up in the Christian era around churches. Well, one would think, well, the very idea of her would be anathema. Well, get up and out of here. Oh, we can't have that. You're a place of holy worship. Her image, carved into stone or made into statues, is always much the same. A naked woman with an oversized round head, rather like a balloon, sitting, sometimes dancing, though more often sitting, with her legs apart and holding her huge, very exaggerated vulva open, usually with both hands, just to make sure you don't miss it, however much you might want to. You see, I did warn you. Oh, yes. While the sexual aspects of women were frequent subjects in pre-Christian art. I mean, going back to the Stone Age, the enlarged breasts or pregnant belly is a common feature of fertility deities, earth mothers, and the like. The almost obscene image of the SHEILA-na-GIG, well, it stands out from the rest in the extremity of its sexual imagery. It's more akin to modern hardcore pornography websites than to early art forms. Well, or at least, so I've been told. So I've been told by those who have actually seen such things. Disgusting. Yes. Anyway, but more surprising than the vulgarity of her image is her association with the Christian Church. That's That's a very hard one to get around. The early church, of course, borrowed a great deal from paganism. Many of the Christian festivals, they were simply pagan ones, given a Christian veneer. They took a pagan festival, slapped a little Christianity onto it, and there you go. Presumably to help with the conversion of pagans who might, well, more readily accept these new festivals if they occurred at the same time as their own, ones they were used to, ones they'd grown up with. The church adding Christian doctrines to them, conversion by the clever use of psychology, you might say. I mean, the early church got there centuries before Sigmund Freud, but at no time did the early church adopt the overt sexual imagery of pagan fertility deities, even the only mildly suggestive ones, and certainly nothing on the scale of the extreme pornographic stance of SHEILA-na-GIG, well, except in her case, when they did, and quite extensively. Very, very, very strange. Her name comes from the Irish Gaelic for Julia of the Breasts, though there is no record of it in old writings. The name was first published in an architectural context in the 1840s, in the Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy, 1840 to 44, and apparently that was simply a local name for one of these grotesque figures that used to be carved on the gable wall of the church in Rochestown, County Tipperary. There was also a reference to it by one John O'Donovan, who was working for the Ordnance Survey of Ireland, and that referred to one at Kiltinnan Castle, also in County Tipperary. Jørgen Andersen also suggests two Old Irish phrases as a possible earlier origin: the old hag of the breasts, or Sheila crouching down. I don't know what Sheila was doing while she was crouching down. Well, I can't think of a couple of things. We'll just pass on that one. It is also interesting to note that an old Irish slang term for the vagina in the north of England, I should say, was gig, while an Irish slang term for it, common enough in Dublin, where I live, though not one for use in public company, as it's considered very vulgar. Using it in any social setting will ensure you never get invited again, is spelled G-I-G-H and pronounced gee. And an Irish slang for being drunk, actually, is gee-eyed. In fact, SHEILA-na-GIG is pronounced as SHEILA-na-GIG in Dublin, so possibly the slang usage could have originated with her. Quite possible. The earliest use of the name that I was able to find was no further back in history than the 18th century, in 1758, when a slipjig was listed with the title the SHEILA-na-GIG. After that, there's another named the Shilling-a-Gig in 1791, and a dance tune called SHEILA-na-GIG listed in a book from 1795 entitled 48 Original Irish Dances. And then, rather strangely, a British Royal Navy warship was named HMS SHEILA-na-GIG. A strange name for a ship. Navy records describing the name as meaning an Irish female sprite. There was also a burletta, which is a sort of an early musical entertainment entitled Midas, an English burletta, written by a man called Cain O'Hara, 1714 to 1782, and first performed in Dublin in 1762, and in London at the Theatre Royal Covent Garden in 1764. And in that production was a song to be sung to the tune of SHEILA-na-GIG. Yet another spelling, and clearly the tune must have been a well-known one. Her vivid representations, and they certainly are vivid, are found most widely in Ireland. Obviously, I suppose, since the name is Irish. As many as 101 of them are recorded, County Tipperary having the largest concentration of them with 27, and there are some 45 in Britain. But they also appear in at least 9 other countries of mainland Europe. But there are differences, however, between the Irish and the European ones, since in Ireland the female figure is encountered, while elsewhere a male figure is quite common, as well as other differences. So that the Irish ones, well, they seem to form a unique group in themselves, rather than being simply an extension of a European phenomenon. They are a separate group unto themselves, though perhaps related to the others, like cousins, you might say. And who'd want relatives like that? It has been suggested that the figures were first carved in France or Spain during the 11th century, and only arrived in Ireland during the 12th century, which could, I suppose, well be the case, since they are found almost exclusively in those areas of the country that were under Norman control after the so-called Norman conquest in the 12th century, while hardly any are seen in areas that remained under the control of the native Irish chieftains. Maybe the Irish chieftains are a little more prudish than the Normans. But where did the original influence for this Christian, era, yet seemingly pre-Christian pagan style image come from? And what was their purpose? And why Ireland in particular? Loads of questions, and not an answer to be seen on the horizon. Obviously, a popular theory is that she represents a pagan fertility goddess, given her overemphasized sex organ, though few of them have breasts to any degree, certainly not the often very large, pendulous breasts traditionally seen on fertility figurines, going back to the Stone Age, such as the little so-called Venus figures. Furthermore, the SHEILA-na-GIGs are not depicted either pregnant or with a baby. They're not breastfeeding or anything like that, which one would expect to see frequently if fertility was an inspiration for them. The goddess of abundance, for example, is shown sitting in a very similar position, but holding a heavily pregnant belly, representing the earth, while the Sheilas are not. They seem to represent nothing more than a sexual image, which is there for nothing more than being a sexual image. Could she be that hag-like figure of Irish mythology, Chaileach there? Well, that would tie in, I suppose, with the old hag of the breasts phrase, right? It's been suggested, but going against the idea of that ancient Irish pagan tradition is the fact that the images seem to have started on mainland Europe and only came to Ireland later on, which would seem to be the wrong way around, if indeed they were inspired by Irish paganism. Plus the fact that no actual pagan examples exist. Nothing like this has ever been found dating from pagan times. And also arguing against that theory is the fact that not all seem to represent an old woman, as the Chaileach there was. Some are very clearly a young woman. They come in many forms, in fact, old, young, fat, thin. Some show their ribs as though they're in an advanced state of starvation. One even has long hair, all of which cast considerable doubt on the idea of the old hag. Also, the Chaileach kept her clothes on, and I'm not aware of any variations of the tales about her that mention wild sexual practices, such as putting her intimate parts on public display. She was known for leaping from mountaintop to mountaintop, but she always did it with her clothes on, for which I think we all give thanks. Another explanation is that they were nothing more than a stonemason's joke. No, something that is frequently trotted out to explain anything odd or hard to understand found on stone. Well, yeah, just a stonemason's joke, you see. Yes, I thought it's a stonemason's joke, yeah. If so, then the joke was an international one, and surely would have some meaning even in that context, which we would know about, and of course we don't. Also, whoever had hired the stonemason in question, the joking stonemason, be it a priest or a nobleman, they might not have seen the humor of a grossly pornographic image they hadn't asked for and almost certainly didn't want clearly displayed on their building for all to see. Oh, I can only imagine the reaction of, say, the parish priest. Yes, the parish priest, going to see how building work was progressing on the new church and being confronted with a naked woman holding her vulva open. No, that would not have ended well, I think. It might have gone something like this. Well, Paddy, I just came to see how the work was progressing. I sure couldn't be going better, Father. 'Tis flying along, so I am. Yes, flying. Well, glad to hear it. What is that? What's what, Father? Oh, you mean your woman there? Well, no, that's a stonemason's joke, so it is. You see, us stonemasons, we love a bit of fun, like. We do that. So we put funny little things here and there, like your woman, you see there. Sure, isn't that amusing, Father? Remove that obscenity at once. Say 500 Hail Marys. and never enter my church again. I shall wash that wall down with holy water. Yes, I think you get the idea. A stonemason's joke seems unlikely, to say the least. At least a stonemason who actually wanted ever to be employed again, or perhaps even be burnt at the stake as an agent of Satan. Then there is the suggestion that they represent a last stand of paganism. People who still worship the old gods, and these images were an attempt at preserving them, possibly putting them on churches as a sign of defiance to the new faith or some such. The old gods forever, down with the new one, to the bloody earth. But in that case, why only an overtly sexual image that doesn't relate to any pagan deity that we know of, and in a form that isn't even found in pre-Christian times? There was no pre-Christian deity remotely resembling that. So why would people wishing to preserve a tradition invent a tradition that never actually existed? That makes no sense. There was no pre-Christian deity anyway like the SHEILA-na-GIG. Would they not have used the image of the Morrigan or Lugh, Bridget or Angus in Ireland, and perhaps, Grona, Rhiannon or Angharad elsewhere, rather than seemingly invent something that never actually existed in the era that they were supposedly wishing to preserve? How could you preserve something that was never there in the first place? And it wasn't quick and easy modern graffiti with a spray can. No one coming. Oh, I have the right shotgun to see that. Oh yes. No, someone fitting a big center stone in an archway, or carving something in a wall with a hammer and chisel. It would have been extremely noisy and rather noticeable. Yet another good way to become the main event of a public execution, I should think. No, the let's keep the old gods alive idea really doesn't make any sense. Then nothing about the SHEILA-na-GIG makes any sense, so I suppose it fits right in as far as that's concerned. Were they symbols of evil female lust, the corrupting threat of the female body as seen by the church? Oh, those women corrupting decency with their bodies. Hardly, since similar images are not found in other forms of religious art. Barbara Freitag suggested that they may have been used in a fertility context, but as so-called birthing stones, given to women in labor. Why any woman about to have a baby would like a very great stone slapped on her, I really don't know. But anyway, again, the absence of a baby or even a pregnant belly as a regular feature seems to make that rather unlikely. Also, the fact that they are usually found rather high up, like on walls, up under eaves, and all that sort of thing. And it would seem, that it would seem really rather difficult to give them to anybody, since they're stuck up on a wall, and rather dangerous to try to lift a woman in labor up in the air and stick her against one of these figures for whatever that was supposed to do. Another suggestion is that they were warnings against the sins of the flesh in any form. Beware the wicked ways of women, they who use their evil charms to draw pious menfolk away from the path of true righteousness. Well, that could fit in, I suppose. They've been being found so often in and around churches and unholy wells, though their use on secular buildings such as castles and manor houses would seem rather doubtful in that context. And again, the lack of a similar image in church art of the period, well, that rather goes against it. Now, they may have been simply warnings to evil things, warding off evil in the manner of the monstrous gargoyles, so typically found on churches throughout the Middle Ages. And one term for them in Ireland was the evil eye stones, which could fit their use on non-religious buildings as well. As evidence of that theory is the fact that many are found over doorways, thus protecting the building against the entrance of evil spirits. And there was a belief that the devil couldn't stand the sight of a woman's sex organs. No! A vagina! I cannot pass such a thing! Yes, Well, that doesn't really fit, since many are found on walls or other places nowhere near an entry point of any kind, such as corbels high up under the roof, right up under the eaves. Unless, of course, Satan had a nasty habit of trying to slip in under the eaves or lift a couple of tiles, and in he slithers, snake-like. Whatever. Could some, at least, of these Sheilas have been directed at prostitutes? Now that has been suggested. Marking places where they could, well, shall we say, show and tell to prove that they were free of disease. And perhaps this had been passed to the church, who would of course have made quite a profit from it, and the church was always very quick to do that. Money spoke with a very loud voice back then. Well, that doesn't tick all the boxes. It doesn't explain those up under the eaves, or those in places where they simply couldn't have been seen by anyone walking down the street, for example. But it could be the case for many on churches, or even castles, I suppose. A noble lord might have been saying, "No, not coming into my castle unless you're clean, so there." It's a possibility regarding some of them, but then what about all the others? Some were seen in a pagan form, such as one recorded around 1783 in the little village of Lusk in County Dublin, now lost, I'm afraid, supposedly buried on the orders of the local clergy to protect people from its evil influences, which, according to Jørgen Andersen, was known to the locals as the idol, though strangely enough few seem to have struck people in that way, which is rather odd, since one might have expected that to be the case given their seemingly obvious pagan connections. I suppose the truth of the matter is that we really have no idea how the mysterious Sheila-na-GIG originated, who or what she actually represents, nor what the intention was of those who carved her grotesque form in so many ways. Those I've seen include some simply carved quite crudely, into the stones in a wall, used as corbels, mounted into a wall as a separate plaque stuck onto the wall, used as the center stone of an archway, protruding figures over doorways, or freestanding figures. One adorns a stable, and another forms the base of the holy water font in the church at Gelsted in Denmark. And many of them are found on south-facing walls, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, why south-facing? Had it something to do with the sun, which is usually seen to the south from these latitudes? Very, very strange. As I said, it doesn't really make any sense. But for that matter, none of them make any sense. Sadly, many of these figures were lost over the years, often destroyed by offended priests who saw them as disgusting, possibly evil pagan influences. We couldn't have that sort of thing going on. Good heavens, no. Others were hidden away. Even museums tending to relegate them to the basement or a storage room somewhere out of sight because they weren't really very nice. Oh, good heavens, look the other way, children! How disgusting! Oh! It's only quite recently that even historians have taken any great interest in them. But they are now at least freed from the prudish suspicion and the usual avoidance of them that existed previously. They have now become acceptable, even if, the mystery of them still remains. And there is one on display in the National Museum of Ireland, should you ever visit it. Since we have not the faintest idea who she was supposed to be, what the purpose of her image was, nor who came up with the idea in the first place, all we can really say is that she is what she is, or was, whenever that is, or was. Sadly, that's about the best we can do. So, until the next time, I shall say goodbye for now, and see you in the next video.